As many of you know, Rossi Rocha will be baptized and confirmed next Sunday, and he'll share part of his journey in just a few minutes. It's great to be tag teaming with you, Rossi. I look forward to that. Rossi chose this text from Romans 12, and it covers so many important bases, giving practical how-tos about being members of the human race, productive members, people of integrity and growth, and how to grow effectively as children of God, followers of Jesus the Christ. It's about interdependence, about community, about being here for each other. The writer of the book of Romans is not the only one with guidance on how to be responsible people in the world. For example, Dr. Brene Brown has concluded that everyone is doing the best they can, giving what they have to work with. Everyone. Believing this helps us meet others with compassion and with patience. Grace, in other words. Ram Dass and Mirabai Bush have coined the phrase that ultimately we're all just walking each other home. Walking each other home. To me, that's a beautiful metaphor of community. The writer of the book of Romans offers a slightly different twist on that, stating we all belong to each other, underscoring that we are intricately connected human beings with different gifts, different abilities, offering what we have for everyone to grow from. This scripture has a beautiful way of pointing out that none of us has arrived. No one knows everything, and we certainly don't know all there is to know about God or our fellow neighbor. This scripture states, don't conform yourself to this age, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. Those words have movement. They're not static. Don't conform, but be transformed means we have the ability to choose. We have the ability to undergo great changes, and we not only add information into our minds, but it can actually be transformed, renewed. And to me, that's like a snake that sheds its old skin and it has a new skin. We are unique, growing, evolving people who think, who process, who are hardwired for connection. So basically, they're saying, please don't be like everyone else. And by all means, don't be static. Be transformed. Allow your mind to grow. And I see this transformation in Rossi. He's risen to challenges and to different occasions all the time. But the verse continues, be transformed by the renewal of your mind so that you can judge what God's will is, what is good and pleasing and perfect. Think about. Renew your minds. Or take stock of what's going on in your mind. If you notice that it's always filled with trivia or weighed down with far too many grim realities, or obsessed with entertainment, or overwhelmed with things like blame or shame or guilt, renew it. Renew your goals. Renew who you are as a person. Renew your purpose on this earth and realign your mind accordingly. Think carefully about who you are when you hit that wall and you realize you need help, and ask for it, find it, seek it out. The result of taking stock will be increased discernment on how to live your best life. That is, you will be in a position to understand more of who God is. That's part of growth. Growth doesn't mean we have arrived. Growth is embarking on a journey of twists and turns, including failure and picking yourself up again. It's helping someone else up, helping to dust them off, and doing so without judgment. That's grace. Grace with ourselves, grace with others. Parents, or churches or other spaces in which there are learners and teachers sometimes give the impression that if you do everything right, you will not fail. There's nothing further from the truth. Failing is a key component of development and growth. What helps us on the journey is to have folks around us who care about us. Young people being encouraged by older folks, and older folks calling upon the wisdom they see in others. All of us truly seeing each other, making connections. Maybe that's a concept that could be called spiritual companioning, an outgrowth of confirmation, maybe. Simply because someone has gone through confirmation or completed a course of study or experienced a lot of various things in life doesn't mean that there's nothing more to learn from here on in. Growth, the spiritual journey, becoming a whole human being is a lifelong process. How great it would be if we all would have someone or even someones to walk us home. There's movement, evolution, growth, transformation as we move from one step to the next. Faith is being confident even when we don't see the outcome. Faith is pursuing growth, change, understanding. And along the way, we'll be helped if we are also convinced that those around us are doing the best they can with what they've been given. We'll be transformed if we see ourselves as people walking each other home, because it's so much safer that way. The way is so much more inviting. And what we discover together has so much more meaning. And if we can see ourselves as an us, rather than a you versus me, or even you and me, rather seeing ourselves together as a unit, as a body, as a community. That's where we will find deep belonging. So now I invite Rossi up. Please give him your undivided attention, which I know you will, and also your complete support as he shares what he's learned on this journey and how he's moving forward from here. Come on up here, Rossi.
All right, well, thank you, Julia. That was really good. I really appreciate it. Thank you. So let's just get right into it. Ever since I was young, no one ever wanted to play with me as a little kid. My whole life, I have often been told how I may be weird, boring, and just quiet I am as a person. I live life hearing these words told to me again and again, and if I'm being honest, these are things that I formed my whole life around. I've always felt a need to kind of fit in. I was unsure exactly what I was doing wrong, why I wasn't able to connect with others, maybe form connections, or just just form conversations as well as maybe other people could. And while I'm yet to find an answer to this question, I can say I've learned to live with these words. In my academic life, I've always been someone who excels in just many aspects of it. I've always been someone who's been at the top of my classes, and just someone who makes it seem almost easy, just how maybe easy I make it seem. I've often been told, I wish I was smart as you, or I wish I had a mind like yours, you just do things as easy. But since I would always respond, thanks, but I didn't really know how else to respond. Because although it is a compliment, I never really took it as one for some reason. I mean, someone's complimenting your mind saying they wish they had the smarts you do, and that's a really good compliment, right? But I guess there's a part of me that didn't really take it as a compliment, really. Yeah, and I don't know why I didn't. So let me run you through a typical day in my school life. I wake up at 7 a.m., I get ready for school, I pack my bag, make sure I have everything for that school day, I eat breakfast, I go to school, work all day, come home exhausted, take a nap when I get home, wake up, and then maybe do homework if I have any for that day, which most days I do, but some days I'm lucky I don't have any. and then I will do dishes and then go back to bed. And it's just cycle repeats on, and just keeps repeating. It sounds like a normal day, right? A normal school day for most, but it does lack a few things which I find important. It lacks family time, it lacks things like my personal hobbies, and just things like socialization. By the weekend, I just want to sleep off the week because I am often just exhausted from all the work I did throughout that whole entire school week. And I just sleep the whole week off, weekend off, if I'm being honest. Some people tell me, I wish I was smart as you are. I wish I had a mind like yours, and I'm often confused because why would someone want to have it like this need to always excel and just fit in all the time? And just having to be the best at most things that you do. Why would anyone want that? And ideally, it does sound amazing, being so smart people can compliment you on just you being a person, just the way you're thinking. At times, it does feel accomplishing and just validates you because you're like, oh, I am doing well, I'm doing good, and that's just what's important. But really, I just had to give up so much in my life. And don't worry, I'm not here to complain about how terrible my life is, because I do not think it is. I promise there's a reason here, just follow along with me here, okay? There's a so-called syndrome of being a golden child, which I have found to be it's pretty commonly referred to in my generation. And if you're not familiar with this term, a golden child is essentially when you form a whole life around being the best version of yourself, to always excel, and most importantly, never fail, ever. And it sounds harsh, right? Well, as much as referring to myself as a golden child makes me almost physically cringe, I guess it is somewhat true. I mean, take what I just told you right now. I've always felt the need to always fit in, to always excel, and not fail. So I guess it does describe me to a certain extent. I did some fair research on why people may develop the so-called syndrome of being a golden child, and I found that it is developed from maybe people who didn't grow up in a maybe not so good environment from youth. And usually people who have this mindset often think this way because they have parents who raised them in an environment where they have often been told just good things as they are because they excel, and this makes them golden in their parents' eyes. And while I don't think my parents were, I researched and said narcissistic parents, I do not think they were at all. They were actually pretty good parents, considerably. But I can tell you, we are not a perfect family. We have had flaws, and although we have had many ups in our life, there's also been many times where we had some downs, and those downs have been pretty low downs, if I'm being honest. When I was young, I often viewed the world as innocent and with a certain optimism. I thought of most things as nearly perfect, although I was a pretty smart kid, so I knew not everything or not anything really was perfect. I did feel that even to my family, we were a pretty good family, and we almost were perfect. I mean, my parents took good care of my sister and I growing up, and they raised us pretty good, and I can admit I had a pretty good childhood. But it wasn't until recently where I had to actually understand that not everything was perfect as we made it seem in our own minds. I learned that not everything is perfect, and nothing really is. I used to think we're as perfect as we make ourselves out to be, but I learned that this way of thinking wasn't always true. Also, in some cases it can be. I felt here it wasn't. If you have been attending CUCC pretty frequently, or at least had some type of longevity here and know of my family, the Rocha family, I'm sure you've heard of us before. We're highly involved with many different committees, and just my sister and I give youth perspectives every single week on the sermon. So yeah, if you have any time, if you've been here for a while, you probably know my family. And while I'm not here to squash your idea or perception of us, I can tell you that we're not perfect, as most things aren't. There are many things that we struggle with, and there's just things in life that there's just nothing everything's perfect. And these past 3 years, I've had to especially learn this, and I've had time to grow and develop myself and just my opinions on the things around me. I mean, my life has been just crazy. I think we can all agree these past 2 years have just been crazy for the most part. Therefore, that innocence I had once felt has been often belittled, and this optimism I felt has become belittled in some ways. I've experienced much more in these past years than I have ever thought I could have beforehand. And I think just recently my life has just heavily changed. I think we can all agree these past few years there's been a lot of change. And here at CUC, we preach the importance of changing and just developing new ideas and just learning to grow. And while I do agree that this is really important, it can often be scary to grow and change and grow out of your old ways of living. There will be times where we will make mistakes, and times where we'll fail or hurt the ones we love, or just maybe not make the best decisions. Human beings aren't perfect, and just finding the balance between giving yourself that grace and showing others that grace as well can be a hard thing to do. As someone who's always formed their life around being someone who excels and just is perfect in most aspects of my life, it's something that I will make mistakes and I will fail, and there will be times where I will not make the right decision or hurt the ones that I love. It's a challenging thing to accept. Fear of failure has been something that I've had to deal with my whole entire life. I think most of us are afraid of these things as well. We're all afraid of failing because we like to think that we're making the best decisions for ourselves and the people around us. But sadly, this isn't always the case. Even just my family life, I can say I've had to learn many different things about my family. We are all our own people. Even just my parents are their own people with their own struggles, life experiences, perspectives, opinions, and just minds and lifestyles. Understanding that beyond ourselves, we are also not perfect is a difficult thing. While I'm not here to tell you exactly how to go about this, I can offer you some advice. We want to know many things in our lives, and there will be times where we will maybe not make the best decisions. We're all strong people navigating our way through our own lives, and there's no given handbook on how to live a perfect life, although sometimes I wish there was, but there isn't. So we need to be able to find a balance between showing ourselves that grace to not be perfect and to make mistakes, and finding that balance between showing that and giving it to other people is so important. Last Sunday, Pastor Julia Pennerzik spoke about the importance of maybe belonging and having the need to fit in. She examined this on a more larger scale on how we as a community can strive to make other people feel belonged rather than making them feel a need to fit in. If you weren't here last week, I really recommend you go listen to it. I just thought it was a really good sermon, but it's a post on Community UCC's Fresno's YouTube channel. But she said something in there which stuck out to me. She said, end quote, "We can welcome all stories. By this I mean we can drop our defenses and allow people to tell us who they are without facing revision or editing to their stories. We can place value on stories by keeping confidences when needed. All of us are people on our own journey, and we hope we will not be the same tomorrow as we are today. And we need to extend that grace to others." Well, I mean, when I first heard this quote, I thought it was just brilliant, because I think it is true. We try to give ourselves grace, but we also need to make sure we're extending that grace to other people as well. Like Julie mentioned, we are trying our best throughout our lives to just be good people and just be good people and help the ones around us. We all are here for different purposes. We all have different means of living. In the gospel speaking that was read earlier, it examined how we all have different purposes here. God has given us many different gifts, and we need to learn how, and different gifts and different type of faiths. And it emphasized while we do have different gifts given by God, we also need to make sure we're extending those gifts to the best of our abilities, making sure that we're just being good people and that we're using these gifts to the best of our abilities. I chose this passage because I felt accurately reflects just that we are all our own people with our own perspectives on life, our own journeys, aspirations, and just hopes for the future, and different gifts given by God. No one's life experiences are going to look the same. The person sitting right next to you has a totally different story than what you do. And so we need to accept the fact that we are not perfect, and that there will be times where we will make mistakes, because we are just trying to navigate our way through our life as best as we can. One of my favorite ways to look at this, actually, through a metaphorical song, but one of my favorite singers, it's also who happens to be someone really well in my generation. Her name is Taylor Swift. And she has a song for a single album called Folklore, which is called Mirror Ball, which is essentially how we are all mirror balls. And if you're fighting yourself, what in the world does that mean? Like a mirror ball? I would say I agree with you. At first I had no clue what this meant, but now that I understand what it does mean, I can tell you a little bit about it. Mirror balls, or disco balls, are these basically balls of just broken pieces of glass that reflect light and that are always just hanging there, just at the top of it, like just hanging there. And when light reflects on them, they can turn into this really beautiful thing. But at the end of the day, there's still these broken pieces of glass. I bring this metaphor because I feel it's important to acknowledge that we are not perfect, and that we all just try to be the best version of ourselves when light is reflected upon us, or when that spotlight is given to us. We hope that when people see us, that we will be able to make a good impression of ourselves, that we will be able to make just good impressions and just make sure that we're just being good people when that light is reflected upon us. Often we put ourselves on the pedestals, as people also put us on pedestals. So unintentionally or not, this is true. We do try to be the best version of ourselves while also putting ourselves on pedestals, even given by others, even just to ourselves. At the end of the day, we're expected to conform to other people's ideas, needs, wants, and expectations, sometimes without any consideration about what we are going through in our own lives or how we're feeling in any given moment. Now, I want you to think about a time time recently we had to conform to other people's ideas, needs, wants, or just maybe a task you had to do. Do you think that you're able to perform this task to the best of your ability, or do you think that maybe something in you wasn't really allowing yourself to do that? And if your answer was maybe no, like you don't think you were able to do this task to the best of your ability, I want you to think why. Was it maybe because that moment you were feeling, you weren't able to put yourself fully in it because maybe you felt that there was something on your mind that just prevented you from doing your best at this thing. Obviously, I'm just assuming, but I think I can have a pretty good idea that the way we are as people can often affect the way we put ourselves into different things. And as someone who sees himself as this kind of golden child that feeling need to be perfect all the time, I can acknowledge that it is hard to do things, especially when you've had this certain expectation of yourself to do good and to be the best version of yourself. And any task that you do, just give it your all. Sometimes you don't have that certain strength to give it our all. Sometimes you just want to kind of do it, just maybe, just finish it and just get it over with. Easier said than done, but I think we as people need to just accept that we are all different and that we have our own life experiences and just ways of living that affects how we put ourselves into different things. So I encourage you to just try to give yourself that grace and extend it to other people as well, to just make mistakes and not be perfect, because really nothing is perfect. And the reason why I was asked to speak today is actually because I was supposed to reflect on the confirmation process and how it relates to myself and just my own life. And essentially, if you're not familiar with confirmation, essentially just on like a broader term, it's just affirming and developing your faith in God and later being able to become a member of whatever church you complete this process at. And through this process, my confirmation mentor, Rob Parenzik, and I went through this book, which was Affirming Faith, the Confirmance Journal. And it essentially revealed just that the confirmation is related, or just God and just our faith is related to many different aspects of our life. It went over topics like worship, love and judgment, the sacraments, and things like hope, justice and peace, and eternal life. It discussed how these topics relate to ourselves, God, and just the church here, community UCC. Now you may be asking, how in the world does it relate to you? How does all you just said relate to anything about your faith or just how your life has reflected your confirmation process here at CUCC? Luckily, this is one of the things I do know that I can tell you because, well, obviously, that's what I spoke to talk about today. I've just listed tons of things in our lives where I've had to grow and things that develop constantly and just things that I've had to form my own ideas, thoughts, opinions, life experiences onto. Faith is something that will constantly be expanding, growing, changing, and just developing. Therefore, even just the future is something that we won't know and something that we are uncertain about because we're here to experience it. When I first presented this idea to a confirmation mentor, Rob Parenzik, he was like, well, what do you mean by the unknown? And just, what do you mean by not knowing? And to this I answered, I don't know. I guess maybe just in the sense that I won't know where I will be in years to come, like 10, 15, 20 years, or even just tomorrow. I don't know where I will be. But these are things which I'll be forced to go through and things that we will learn from, things that we will get through. The reason why we do things will be different from one person to another. And the reason why we live will be different depending on who you are as a person and your own life experiences. We are all our own people. We have all obtained different levels of wisdom and different levels of just thinking and just ways we view our own lives and the life of people around us. We don't know a lot of things in our life, but I have found not knowing to be a beautiful thing. I don't know where I will be in 5 years, 10 years, or just years to come, as I mentioned earlier. And there will be things that which will present as challenging. But fear will be a constant in our lives, but learning to that fear of the future to change that into something that's more so an experience to be the best version of yourself and just an experience to be able to put yourself into these things fully rather than be fearful of the future or what's to come. I found it can make life a lot more pleasant, for lack of better words. So using the future as a way to maybe acknowledge that we won't be perfect, but we need to still be able to give ourselves grace to mess up, but while also making sure we're just being good people and just being the best version of ourselves in any task that we do is important. So I encourage you, just have fun with this. We only live once, as cheesy as it may sound. And we are here, and that is what is important. Allow yourself to be able to develop and grow as a person, and just to be able to be yourself and put yourself into the things that you're doing. And I feel that putting yourself into things and allowing yourself to grow and evolve as a person is one of the biggest signs of growth. And isn't that what God wants for us? To just grow as people, be the best version of ourselves, and just have fun with our lives. So allow yourself to be able to fail, and allow yourself to be able to make mistakes, and allow yourself to extend that grace to other people, because we are not perfect. Nothing is. So just try your best, and to help other people belong, and make sure have yourself also feel like you belong somewhere. We here at Community United Church of Christ are welcoming to everyone. And like I said, and like Dave Gasuga said last week, which I feel was, I think all of us kind of connected with on some level, is that we are not a church for everyone, but we're a church that welcomes everyone. Before I finish on my speech, I'd like to reread you what Gospel speaking that we chose earlier, the Romans 12, 1 through 8. I just want to read expert from it because I felt it's a very good reminder of just how we live as people and just the things that we do. Do not think of yourself more highly than you ought to be, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment in accordance with the faith God has attributed to each of you. But yeah, for just as each one of us has one body with many members, and these members do not have the same function. So in Christ, we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. We have different gifts, according to the grace of God given to each of us. If your gift is prospering, then prosper in accordance to your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is to encourage, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, then do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it so cheerfully. Thank you. I hope to see you guys next week where I will complete my confirmation process here at CUCC. And just remember, keep trying your best, and just because we're all trying our best in our lives, and that is what's important. So let's just have fun with this, and I encourage you just to have fun with it, because, yeah, so thank you. Thank you.